peu patiente avec nous. Merci.
Okay, so let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Syed Hussan. That's spelled Syedhussan. And I am the Executive Director of the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change, and I serve on the Migrant Rights Network Secretariat. Mary, you're muted.
Bonjour tout le monde. Merci beaucoup d'être ici aujourd'hui avec nous. Mon nom est Mary Foster. Je milite avec Solidarité sans frontières à Montréal et je suis aujourd'hui ici pour le secrétariat de Migrant Rights Network. En fait, nos conférencières vont s'exprimer dans les deux langues et nous avons de l'interprétation simultanée. Pour suivre la conférence en français, il faut choisir français dans Zoom. Si vous voyez en bas, il faut cliquer sur le petit icône de globe, de monde, en bas de votre écran et sélectionner français. Alors, si vous voulez suivre en français, sélectionnez interprétation en bas de votre écran et le français par la suite. Ça?
Yes, so this media briefing is going to be in English and French. If you are going to be following along in English, please look for the little globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then select English, and you'll be able to follow along. Okay, so yes, thank you.
OK. J'espère que tout le monde qui a besoin de l'interprétation en français marche bien. Est-ce que c'est réglé? Super. Okay. So now I'm just going to talk about how we're proceeding today. This is a media briefing for journalists across the country. We're going to begin with introductory remarks from each speaker, starting with Syed Hussan, and then we're going to hear from each of our panelists from across the country. Our panelists today include some of Canada's largest civil society organizations, including Oxfam Canada, Doctors Without Borders, Climate Action Network, and the Ligue des droits et libertés. Doctors of the world, I'm sorry. We're then going to take questions from journalists. And if you're a journalist and you have a question, please put your name and your media outlet in the Q&A section, and we will unmute you and invite you to ask your questions when we get to the question period. We anticipate that this will take about an hour, no more.
We're here today united in our calling on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Parliament to swiftly and finally introduce fair rules to ensure equal rights for 1.7 million migrants. At this point, there is almost no one in the country who is not aware of the immense exploitation and abuse faced by migrants. Each of us knows that migrant farm workers in Canada are living, to quote a recent letter from Jamaican farm worker members of our organization, in systematic slavery. At least 3 farm workers died in a single week in August of this year, unable to protect themselves because they lack permanent immigration status. Similarly, we're all aware that domestic migrant workers are living in their employer-provided home and are being underpaid and are being exploited. In 2021, at least 8 international students in Canada killed themselves because of the stress of high tuition and low wages strapped by immigration rules. Many asylum seekers in Canada remain in limbo for years. Over 40% of in-country claimants in the country are being rejected by an exclusionary system. Most migrants, including farm workers, care workers, international students, and refugees, have no meaningful access to permanent residency. And permanent residency is not just about whether you live here or you don't. It's about access to basic rights, whether it's universal healthcare, education, being able to speak up against a boss or an abusive landlord, or being with your family. Without permanent resident status, migrants simply don't have the power to protect themselves or access services. Today, we're not asking for charity. We are demanding equality. Most temporary permits, whether work permits, study permits, or refugee claimant permits, which are the only gateways to Canada for low-wage and racialized people. But these pathways are actually a path of a cliff. At one point or the other, the permits expire and cannot be replaced. The only choice, which is no choice at all, is living in Canada without any status or returning to a country that you may not be able to live in. Whether it's to escape war or poverty, climate catastrophe, or discrimination, or because you have formed relationships, attachments, and community in Canada, many people make the difficult decision to live here without immigration papers. As a result, there are nearly 500,000 people in Canada without any immigration status. Today, you'll hear from 3 of them who will explain what it is like to live here without status. These issues are not new, and in fact, the solutions are simple. Full and permanent immigration status for each and every person in the country. That's it. That's what we're asking. A fair society is one with equal rights, and equal rights are only possible if everyone has the same rights. And that means everyone is treated equally, everyone is recognized as a person. For undocumented migrants, the mechanism is that for that is a comprehensive and inclusive regularization program. Regularization means giving permanent rights to undocumented people. That is, people failed by Canada's immigration system and who as a result have lost their immigration status are made into permanent residents. It is a common enough strategy and policy position around the world. Ireland just wrapped up a program earlier this year. Ecuador is about to launch a new one. In the last 20 years, 23 of the 26 member nations of the EU have created regularization programs. Prime Minister Trudeau has shown that he's ready to do the right thing. And for the first time in nearly half a century, Canada is moving forward in a real and comprehensive regularization program for undocumented migrants. We are all here to insist that absolutely each and every undocumented person should be included. No one left behind. Equality is equality, and there can be no exceptions. All exceptions are discrimination. Over the last 2 years of COVID-19, there have been numerous programs that have been small and exclusionary, those that have only given these temporary pathways instead of immediate permanent residency. The current government must learn from the resounding failures of some of these programs. We need to address these problems. We don't need small and temporary pathways. We need comprehensive and inclusive regularization. Only then can we even begin to address the problem. Over 500,000 people in this country are undocumented because of failures of immigration policy. Prime Minister Trudeau now has the historic opportunity to begin to correct these wrongs and be remembered for ensuring equal rights for these members of our society. There is cross-country support for such a move. Over 480 organizations have signed on to a call for full and permanent immigration status for all. Some of them you are going to hear from today. Not only is this the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do right now. More of us are working than ever before, but prices are high and a recession looms large. Regularizing 500,000 undocumented people will immediately increase employer contributions by at least $1.1 billion per year. And as 1.7 million people lay down deeper roots, they will build our communities at a time when it matters most. The next parliament must not wait. It cannot wait. The time for comprehensive and immediate and inclusive regularization is right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hussan. We will now hear from one of our undocumented leaders joining us today from Toronto. Hussan.
We're going to invite Caroline to speak. Caroline is an undocumented healthcare worker, a refugee from Nigeria who's joining us from Toronto right now. Go ahead, Caroline.
Caroline, just for interpretation, please speak as slowly as possible so people can follow you in the interpretation.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Caroline Michael. I want to say good afternoon for everyone, and for this great opportunity, I thank you all. So my name is Caroline Michael. I came to Canada in 2018. And first, I'll have to say I'm a member of Migrant Alliance Workers for Change as well. So I came to Canada in 2018 as a refugee claimant from Nigeria, but my refugee claim was rejected. I tried to appeal, it was rejected again. I tried to apply for pre-removal risk assessment, and it was rejected as well. I was supposed to be deported on May 3rd, 2022. But because my life is at risk in Nigeria, I cannot go back. I am now one of the undocumented immigrants here in Canada. I am a professional care worker who has been providing care for the senior citizens, people with special needs and disabilities here in Canada. And my coming to this conference today is to ask for nothing less than permanent resident status for all. I mean for all, and no one should be left out, no exception and no condition. The migrant workers, students, caregivers, farm workers, and all the undocumented immigrants in Canada should be given the right to live a human-like life and shouldn't be treated like animals. We want to make this message clear to the Prime Minister Trudeau and Immigration Minister Sean Fraser that permanent residency for all is our number one priority.
Recording in progress.
And my challenges as a refugee claimant and then as an undocumented person in Canada has been a horrific, terrible, stressful, painful, and tearful situation. Everything I applied for was denied, from my hearing to my humanitarian and compassionate application with non-refundable application fees. And the lawyer's fees were very expensive too. Each application I filed, I was charged for it. And the total I paid was over $12,000 in lawyer fees alone. I was even scammed by my first lawyer, where he charged me over 3,300 and he never did anything. Soon after he suddenly died, I found out through my member of parliament that he had never filed any application for me and that he was not even a lawyer. That was the end of my money and everything. This has been the hardest thing in my life as a human being to go through. I cannot even properly explain it to you in words. And most of the challenges for undocumented people in Canada is that we don't have access to basic needs like healthcare. For example, one day I wasn't feeling well while I was still waiting for a refugee decision. I went to my local working clinic and I was asked to pay $20 to register and then $50 to see the doctor. Even though I was supposed to be covered under the interim federal health program, I refused to pay it. And then I went to another working clinic. But because I was sick, I had no choice but to pay the $50 fee to see the doctor. This was a very high amount for me, but I had to pay. This is completely unfair. Our healthcare should not be tied up to our immigration status. Now that I am undocumented, I don't even have interim federal health coverage. I am scared of falling sick right now. Because of all my experiences as a migrant, it has really affected my mental health in one way or the other. I've become depressed. And for the last 2 days, my eyes has refused to close. I cannot sleep anymore. I cannot even think of seeing other people because I feel mentally trapped. One of the painful aspects is that there are times I feel like maybe I don't want to do my job right now anymore. But if I don't have permanent resident status, there are few jobs I can do as an undocumented person here in Canada. Before I became undocumented, I was accepted into Seneca College and Friendship College. But I had to defer my education. I had to defer my dreams because of my status. Everything has been aborted. I am just being held captive. I can't even take a week off my job and go traveling to somewhere to have some rest. I am held bound like someone in a prison. This has been my last 4 years here in Canada. I am standing here with others to demand justice for myself and every other undocumented immigrants in Canada, because we're working, even during the pandemic, we're all out there working. And we're working for the growth of this nation, of this country, Canada, for the well-being of the Canadian senior citizens, people with disabilities, and special needs. Myself and others, we're out during all the waves of the pandemic, and we're still working for the development of Canada. But we are not robots. We are humans. We are all human beings. So I, with others, are here to let the next parliament, MPs, Prime Minister Trudeau, and Immigration Minister Sean Fraser, to hear our voices, that we refuse to suffer any longer and demand status for all. And we're demanding this status for all with no conditions, no exception, and no one should be left out. Thank you very much. That's my speech for today.
Merci beaucoup, Caroline. Thank you so much, Caroline, for your courage in speaking out and those strong words. Maintenant, nous avons avec nous Madame Pénélope Boudreault, la directrice des opérations nationales et elle-même une infirmière dans la clinique médicale des personnes sans papier de Médecins du Monde à Montréal. Après, sa collègue Chloé Sebron va prendre la relais. Elle est conseillère principale de plaidoyer pour MDM et sera disponible pour les questions par la suite. Pénélope?
Thank you so much, Caroline. Médecins du Monde est vraiment fier de se joindre aux paroles aujourd'hui puis aux batailles qui sont livrées par les personnes migrantes à statut précaire à Montréal tous les jours. Donc, merci beaucoup pour cette invitation.
Pénélope, si vous pouvez parler très lentement pour les interprètes. Merci.
Tous les jours, des personnes migrantes à statut précaire comme Caroline se présentent à la clinique médicale de Médecins du Monde car elles n'ont pas accès à une couverture médicale. Mais en réalité, le vrai problème, c'est que leur statut n'est pas régularisé. Je parle de femmes enceintes, de personnes âgées avec des maladies chroniques, des femmes victimes de violences conjugales, des personnes qui vivent au Canada, qui souvent travaillent et contribuent au développement de la société québécoise. Des personnes qui n'ont pas accès aux soins en raison de leur statut migratoire précaire. C'est un fardeau supplémentaire qui a un impact direct sur leur santé physique et mentale. De l'anxiété, de la dépression, de l'isolement, de la perte d'estime de soi. Elles ont traversé un parcours migratoire déjà traumatisant, puis elles arrivent ici et la bataille est loin d'être terminée. La complexité du système d'immigration les met encore plus à risque. Les personnes migrantes se présentent à notre clinique à Montréal. La première étape est de voir comment on va pouvoir les aider à régulariser leur situation. Comment nous pouvons leur donner accès à une couverture médicale. Le système migratoire est extrêmement complexe, Puis nos intervenantes sociales sont spécialisées pour essayer de comprendre ce système-là. Ça prend beaucoup de temps et une expertise extrêmement pointue pour démêler tout ça. Trop souvent, les gens ils tombent dans les mailles du filet. Il est démontré que la précarité du statut migratoire est l'un des facteurs clés de la précarité économique, sociale, mais aussi un indicateur de moins bonne santé. En tant qu'organisation médicale humanitaire, Médecins du Monde soutient les demandes pour la mise en œuvre d'un programme de régularisation sûr, complet et inclusif à travers le Canada. Médecins du Monde aborde la santé dans une vision globale, ce qui inclut toutes les sphères de la santé d'une personne. C'est pourquoi on reconnaît l'effort de nos partenaires pour la régularisation du statut pour toutes et tous. C'est un facteur qui influence la santé. Le droit à la santé est un droit internationalement reconnu et protégé. La régularisation du statut est un outil essentiel pour garantir les droits fondamentaux des personnes migrantes et favoriser le bien-être d'une société dans son ensemble. C'est une vision que Médecins du Monde défend partout dans le monde. Il est important de faire front commun pour la protection des droits humains et l'accès aux services essentiels pour toutes et tous au Canada. La première prescription que nous voulons faire aux personnes qui fréquentent notre clinique médicale, c'est la régularisation de leur statut. Je vous remercie encore beaucoup pour cette invitation.
Thank you, Penelope, for those words and for your solidarity. Next, we're going to hear from Danilo De Leon, who's an undocumented migrant leader from Edmonton, and he is the chairperson of Migrant Canada. Danilo, please take it away.
Good day to all our media people here, and thank you for attending this important press conference. My name is Danilo De Leon. I live in Edmonton, Alberta. I am an undocumented worker. I was scheduled to be deported. My deportation was scheduled on August 29, 24 hours before the schedule of my removal. I received a news from a federal court through my lawyer that my removal was deferred. It was a sigh of relief, but I felt like I was in a death row waiting to be hung, just waiting for a miracle. I'm not out of the woods. I'm still fighting for my status in Canada. Like many others, we came here in Canada to work because Canada needs workers. We're more than just workers that feed Canada's economy. We are human beings that have the right to live in Canada with dignity. We are here to demand to be regularized. Life has been rough since I became undocumented. Like many others, access to services and healthcare was hard to get. I worked in many abusive employers before I got better employers where I work now. Non-payment of correct wage, being yelled at, long hours, and no respect are often my issues and many undocumented issues in the workplace. During the height of COVID, many undocumented from my community lost their jobs and no access to social services. They have nothing to eat. Our health was threatened. My daughter just graduated nursing a month ago. I haven't seen her since 2013. My daughters are the reason why I continue to sacrifice being far from them and fighting for my status. I want to be reunited with them in Canada so they will have a better future. This is why I am here before you to tell the next parliament to ensure permanent residency status for each one of every undocumented person and migrant. We cannot wait. Make status for all a priority now. No one should be excluded. We need a regularization program that do not discriminate. We need a human regularization program, not for your chosen few, but for all. A permanent resident status for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danilo, for your strong words. You're always so inspiring. Now I'd love to invite Nina Gonzalez to unmute and speak. Nina, if you can speak slowly for the translation, that's going to help. Nina's the coordinator of the Immigrant Workers Centre regularization campaign, and she's active in their Women's Committee and is herself non-status.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Nina. Je ne sais pas si vous écoutez bien, ça comprend? Oui? Non? Est-ce que c'est bien? Non, en premier, je voudrais dire merci à toutes les personnes qui sont là, à mes camarades sans statut, à tous les organismes. Voilà. Je m'appelle Nina. Je suis membre du Centre de travailleurs et travailleuses immigrantes, particulièrement active au comité des femmes. Alors que nous sommes en période électorale au Québec, les partis politiques ne parlent pas du nombre d'immigrés en ignorant la réalité concrète, surtout l'importance du statut de migration. Les personnes sans statut sont obligées à vivre dans l'isolement, dans la peur, avec de graves problèmes de santé et d'abus, de discrimination sur les lieux de travail, pour l'accès au logement, pour l'accès aux soins de santé. Ça fait des années que nous sommes dans ces conditions. C'est pourquoi un programme de régularisation est non seulement nécessaire et urgent, mais il permettrait également de rendre justice à tant des années d'injustice et d'abus. Nous, les personnes sans statut, nous contribuons de toutes les manières à cette société. Pour finaliser, nous voulons que le Québec participe dans le programme de régularisation proposé par le gouvernement fédéral. Et nous voulons un programme large, inclusif et permanent. Nous voulons exercer notre droit en toute liberté et sécurité en tant que les travailleurs et travailleuses. Nous voulons la reconnaissance de notre travail. Nous voulons l'accès à la compensation pour les accidents du travail, les maladies et les maladies professionnelles. Notre système de migration entraîne systématiquement des personnes sans statut de migration, soit en conséquence un rejet de demande d'asile ou à cause de l'aspiration d'un permis de travail, pour lequel l'employeur peut refuser la prolongation. La perte de statut, c'est un problème administratif imposé par le système. Ce n'est pas un acte criminel. Nous méritons un statut comme toutes les autres personnes ici au Canada. Nous avons les valeurs, tenemos valor, tenemos derechos y juntos luchamos por nuestra causa. Estatus para todos y todas. Gracias. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Nina. Gracias, Nina. Hussan.
Thank you so much, Nina. That was incredible. Thank you so much for your words. Up next, we're going to hear from Ravon, who is the Executive Director of Oxfam Canada.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Caroline, Nina, and Danilo. That was fantastic to hear from you. Oxfam is a global movement working in 90 countries to end poverty and injustice. And our work is grounded in human rights, driven by diversity and anti-racism, and rooted in feminist approaches. Around the world, we stand with migrants and refugees who are fighting for their rights and face discrimination, hostility, and violence. We proudly stand in solidarity with the 500,000 people living in Canada today without a valid immigration status.
Lauren, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just from our interpreters, if you can slow down. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
These people contribute so much to our society and economy and are helping build the Canada of tomorrow, and yet face exploitation, abuse, and fear. Everyone in Canada deserves to live in dignity with access to basic rights and services. As a feminist organization committed to advancing gender equality and women's rights, we at Oxfam are calling on the government to move forward with a comprehensive and inclusive regularization program that leaves no one behind. A partial or exclusionary program would leave out the most marginalized, undocumented women in this country. I'm thinking, for example, of the 25,000 migrant caregivers, the majority of whom are racialized women who provide support to Canadian families and yet face some of the worst cases of exploitation and abuse. Working in people's homes and out of sight makes them particularly vulnerable to abuse, and yet they have few avenues to claim their rights and seek support. During the pandemic, 1 in 3 of these caregivers lost their jobs, and yet they couldn't access income supports. We as a society ask these women to care for our loved ones and yet reward them with poverty wages and a precarious status. I'm also thinking of the women who have escaped conflict and war and often arrive in Canada alone with their kids. These women are the sole breadwinners for their families and are determined to keep their children safe and fed. Yet without status, they don't have access to essential supports like the Canada Child Benefit or subsidized daycare. It is virtually impossible to work and provide for your children under such conditions. The strains these women face are unimaginable. The Canadian government has committed to advancing gender equality, fighting racism, and building an inclusive economy, and has taken many important steps forward in recent years. An inclusive regularization program that provides status for all would be a triple win. It would advance gender equality by securing rights and economic opportunities for some of the most marginalized women in our communities. It would help bolster our economy in these uncertain times by giving undocumented people the opportunity to apply for jobs in the many sectors that are facing labor shortages. And it would make an immediate dent in the inequality gap that has been rising in Canada. We at Oxfam have seen the positive impact that regularization programs have had in some of the countries in which we work. A comprehensive and inclusive program has not only proven to be possible, but to have real social and economic benefits for the countries who have been sufficiently bold and visionary to take this step to right injustice. We at Oxfam are very proud to support the principles for a comprehensive regularization program as set out by the Migrant Rights Network. And we thank you for your leadership.
Merci beaucoup pour votre solidarité. Thank you so much for your solidarity, Lauren. Strong words, and let's hope they're heard. Maintenant, nous avons avec nous Madame Laurence Guénette, qui est la coordinatrice de la Ligue des droits et libertés ici au Québec. Laurence.
Bonjour. Oui, alors la Ligue des droits et libertés, c'est un organisme qui, depuis 1963, donc depuis 60 ans déjà, travaille à faire connaître, défendre et promouvoir tous les droits humains qui sont reconnus, notamment dans la Charte internationale des droits de l'homme. Et ça fait plusieurs années que la Ligue des droits et libertés soutient cette campagne en faveur de la régularisation de toutes les personnes sans statut ou à statut précaire. Je vais passer rapidement, je ne répéterai pas tous les exemples de droits humains qui sont violés, bafoués en raison de la précarité des statuts. On a entendu plusieurs exemples depuis le début de la conférence de presse, allant du droit à la santé, au droit à l'éducation, passant même par le droit à la vie. Mais quelque chose que ça nous fait remarquer, c'est que les droits humains sont vraiment interdépendants. Donc, en négligeant de régulariser le statut de toutes et de tous, on entraîne des violations de droits humains pour ces personnes. Et ce caractère d'interdépendance des droits peut aussi nous faire réaliser à quel point, en régularisant les statuts de toutes ces personnes, on peut changer radicalement des milliers de vies ici assez rapidement en les améliorant. Une autre caractéristique des droits humains qu'il faut vraiment se rappeler, c'est qu'ils sont universels. Donc, cette universalité des droits, ça signifie hors de tout doute que tous les êtres humains jouissent des mêmes droits du seul fait de l'humanité et indépendamment de leur statut ou de toute autre caractéristique. Et là, je cite le Haut Commissariat des Nations Unies pour les droits humains. Donc, ce caractère universel ne doit jamais être oublié quand le Canada met en place des politiques migratoires. Donc, le Canada, ça fait des décennies, semble-t-il, qui se félicite et s'applaudit de son rôle de pionnier, de promoteur des droits humains à travers le monde sur la scène internationale. Mais les droits humains, ça ne peut pas se limiter à être seulement un discours. Le Canada a le devoir et la responsabilité de s'assurer que les droits de chacun et chacune sont respectés. Et évidemment, le Canada a aussi la responsabilité de ne pas violer lui-même les droits des personnes. Donc, la Ligue des droits et libertés appuie la revendication et exige que le gouvernement mette en place un programme de régularisation qui octroierait un statut complet et permanent pour toutes les personnes qui ont un statut précaire au Québec et au Canada, qui serait un programme de régularisation universel qui ne laisse personne derrière, comme on l'a déjà nommé plus tôt. Et sur le plan administratif, un programme, que ce soit une demande qui soit simple à formuler et peu coûteuse, encore une fois, dans l'idée que ce soit réellement accessible à toutes les personnes qui en ont besoin actuellement. C'est donc impératif que le Canada permette et facilite que toutes ces personnes qui sont précarisées à l'extrême et dont on a eu des témoignages tout à l'heure obtiennent un statut de résident permanent et puissent enfin exercer leurs droits les plus fondamentaux. Alors, merci et bravo pour le courage et la persévérance aussi des personnes sans statut qui militent en ce moment pour ça. Merci.
Thank you so much for those words. And our last speaker is Caroline Brouillette, who is the National Policy Manager of the Climate Action Network, which is Canada's largest coalition of climate organizations. Over to you.
Caroline, just again, slow for the translation. Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder, and thank you for the invitation, and to everyone for the powerful speeches. It truly is an honor to be here today and for Climate Action Network Canada to join Migrant Rights Network, its members, and those of you here today in this essential campaign for climate justice. Climate Action Network Canada is a coalition of over 140 organizations operating from coast to coast to coast. Our membership brings together environmental groups with trade unions, First Nations, social justice, development, health and youth organizations, faith groups, and local grassroots initiatives. What is currently called Canada has an enormous climate debt. It owes a safe and equitable future to people across the world and marginalized communities here that are disproportionately affected by climate impacts. Canada is one of the largest emitters, both in per capita terms and absolute terms. We rank amongst the 10 most polluting countries in the world. What does this have to do with displacement? Well, the science tells us that extreme climate events, like the devastating floods that we are currently seeing in Pakistan, are made more intense and more frequent as the global temperature warms. But climate change also causes slow onset events, like declining agricultural crop productivity, droughts leading to water shortages, and rising sea levels. Both these types of events impact millions of people across the world who depend on the land for their livelihood, and that may force them to move against their will. And the impact of extractive business models of the Canadian companies who operate here and across the world do not only result in GHG emissions, but also in activities like mining, which disrupts land-based ways of life. So Canada has the responsibility and the capacity to address its disproportionate contribution to climate impacts and the consequences of these on people. Doing our fair share of the climate effort means more than reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. It's about how we will care for one another in a context where climate change will unfortunately amplify existing threats and inequities. In addition to this moral imperative, there's also an opportunity here. Migrants bring critical knowledge and expertise about resilience to climate impacts. Without full rights, migrants cannot fully contribute to Canadian society, including about how we collectively face the critical threat that is climate change. So that's why a few weeks ago, with 21 of our members, we sent a letter to Prime Minister Trudeau and Minister Fraser, urging them to fulfill their promise of creating a regularization program and a program expanding pathways to permanent residency in the most comprehensive and inclusive way, leaving no one behind, which means giving equal rights to all migrants. We are proud to fully support Migrants Rights Network's recommendations for this regularization program. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown how unequitable our systems are. This includes the injustices faced by migrant workers. In 2022, we no longer have the luxury of responding to one crisis at a time with incremental measures. The crises we face are interconnected. Whether we talk about climate change and social inequity, or energy security, affordability, our fossil economy, and the way migrant rights are threatened here and now. The Government of Canada has a choice. How will we respond to these crises? By waiting for them to strike and then scrabbling to patch on Band-Aid solutions, or by working together in solidarity to increase our resilience? And a key moment in this next parliament, where Climate Action Network Canada will be looking to assess what the government's response is to this question, is whether it implements status for all. Migrant justice is climate justice. Merci beaucoup. Ça me fera plaisir de répondre aux questions.
Thank you so much, all of you, and thank you so much to the members of the media who are here in attendance. As we can see, whether we talk about feminist justice, whether we talk about access to fundamental healthcare or access to human rights or action on climate justice, the call right now is full and permanent immigration status for all. The call is for full, comprehensive and inclusive program of regularization for undocumented people right now. And this is a call that is being echoed across the country, and it will be echoed come this September 18th. On Sunday, September 18th, there are going to be demonstrations in 12 cities. In almost every province in the country, migrants and supporters are going to take to the streets to tell the incoming parliament that there is no time to waste. There's no time to put this off. The ongoing tragedies, the ongoing suffering, as well as the ongoing courage of migrants tells us that we need to take swift action. So for journalists who would like to ask a question, please indicate your name and your media outlet through the Q&A, which is the Q&A function that is at the bottom of your screen, so that we will then unmute you, and so you can ask a question and we can redirect you. And the questions can be asked in both English and French. So I see somebody's raised their hand, but we need to know your name and your media outlets. If you could just use the Q&A function and just let us know what that is, so before we're able to unmute you. Thank you.
Bonjour. Nous prenons maintenant les questions des journalistes qui sont présents avec nous. Vous pouvez demander votre question dans la langue de votre choix, mais avant que vous posiez la question, il faut que vous signalez que vous voulez poser une question. C'est quelque chose en bas de votre écran. Tu vas voir je crois que c'est question et réponse en bas, et puis il faut mettre votre nom et le nom de la chaîne médiatique, et puis on va prendre les questions. Merci.
So I see Inish has a question. Inish, you are now able, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Bonjour, merci de prendre ma question. Je voulais savoir si vous donniez une échéance au prochain Parlement et au gouvernement Trudeau. Voilà, est-ce que vous leur donnez, je ne sais pas, 3 mois pour qu'ils respectent leurs promesses?
Yeah. Every day that passes, we are seeing tragedy. Every day that passes, you know, every time a mother has to choose not to put her child in school, every time someone has to choose not to get healthcare, every time someone is facing exploitation and abuse, that is 1 day too long, that is 1 hour too long, that is 1 minute too long. We have not had a real regularization program here since 1973, and even that was exclusionary. So our timeline is immediately. We cannot wait. We are calling on this parliamentary session to move quickly and make an announcement as soon as possible and implement it as soon as possible. But there is a very brief window, as we are all aware, within the current political context of a minority government, that we are unable to, and anything can happen at any moment. So our timeline is immediately, but we will not stop after September 18th. We're going to be watching carefully, with all of our allies who are here. We're going to continue to take action. Thank you. Does anybody else have other questions? I see. Fernando, New Canadian Media. Fernando, we're going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Just wondering, I know we're talking about undocumented people specifically, but just about, I think it was last August, just August the past, there was a favorable decision for 54 migrant farm workers that came out that found favorable court decision that found that the OPP had racially profiled them in an investigation into sexual assault that had happened about a decade ago. And again, that's about migrant farm workers specifically, but I'm wondering if because of the because that has highlighted the issues with the seasonal agricultural worker program and with the immigration system in general, I'm wondering if that can be used as leverage with this call for status for all, for non-status people, and if you think of that, how you see that affect this the systemic issues with the immigration system.
Thank you. So the case that you're referring to is the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal decision that said that there was racism done by the Ontario Provincial Police when it gathered DNA from 54 Black migrant farm workers, often rounding up people, even though they didn't match the description of the assailant, and gathering, you know, DNA from all of these people. And with Justice for Migrant Workers, the 2 of those workers took this to the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal, and they won. Each of the workers have won monetary compensation, which can now be extended to all 54 workers, which would be approximately $144,000 that could be gotten. But it's much more than that. Of course, they're also fighting to have the DNA records cleared. What this case showed is that racism is fundamentally part of our system, whether it's provincial police doing that, whether it's people on the Roxham border who are being discriminated against, whether it is the huge number of immigration detention, which is primarily of racialized people, whether it's landlords or employers. So whether it is that recent report by Immigration Refugee Citizenship Canada, which did an internal audit and found that most of their employees were actually carrying out racist activities while abroad, and then following that, the Canada Border Services Agency was also found by an internal audit to be doing racist actions at the border. So we can see that racism is a fundamental part of this issue, and the way in which we can move through this crisis of racism that is built into this country's past and present is to give power to racialized people to defend themselves. to be able to speak up and fight back. And that's what permanent resident status is. It is the mechanism through which all other rights are accessed. And so just as those workers, they could be rounded up by police because they were scared and afraid because they didn't have permanent resident status. So we are calling on the federal government to regularize undocumented people, as I said, not as an act of charity, but because this is the mechanism through which equal rights are accessed. We have Ruby Pratka, who is a freelancer from Quebec. I'm just going to unmute you. Go ahead, Ruby.
Great. Okay, can you hear me? Est-ce que tout le monde m'entend?
Yes.
Okay.
Just speak slowly for the interpreters, Ruby, please. Thanks. Hi.
Okay, hi, Mary. So just wondering, because the situation in Quebec is unique, as it so often is, but especially right now, because we're in the midst of an election campaign, as one of the speakers mentioned, and some of the parties are calling for Quebec to take over even more categories of immigration from the federal government. There's also kind of a cultural anxiety here about immigration and preserving language and culture, that kind of thing. Mary, as a Quebecer, you know what I'm talking about. And so I'm just wondering if you plan to launch a parallel campaign to lobby the Quebec government to buy into any eventual regularization campaign that the federal government will roll out.
Nina and Chloé, maybe you would like to respond. Chloé et Nina, est-ce que vous avez des réponses pour ça? Sinon, je vais...
Vous pouvez répondre en français aussi, ça ne fait pas de différence. Si vous voulez que je rédise ma question en français, je pourrais le faire.
Ruby, there's translation, it's okay.
Je peux laisser d'abord la parole à Nina, si elle est prête, sinon je peux y aller.
Oui. Mais au Québec, c'est un enjeu, les problématiques de migration, mais en plus, c'est qu'il y avait beaucoup de discrimination, c'est pas un secret. C'est comme ça, à partir des gouvernements qu'on a eu présentement, c'est l'enjeu. Mais en même temps, c'est qu'on était clair que c'est pas une affaire qu'on se va isoler pour faire la lutte. Au contraire, on fait aussi de la pression à l'intérieur de Québec et aussi à l'appui de l'Université Canada, parce que sinon, ça va être comme toujours à être fait, non? C'est facile comme ça sera plus facile pour le gouvernement de se laver les mains et laisser passer les affaires, que c'est très important pour tous nous autres. C'est que, si vous pouvez répondre aussi. Merci.
Chloé et Laurence, si vous voulez donner un petit
Chloé,
mot
ouais.
aussi.
S'il te plaît, merci.
Pour Médecins du Monde, on s'adresse évidemment aux différents paliers de gouvernement selon leurs compétences. On travaille le niveau fédéral en ce moment, et quand ce sera le moment, on ira évidemment parler avec le niveau provincial. Ce qu'on essaie d'expliquer au Québec de manière générale aussi, c'est vraiment à quel point ces opportunités en fait, de programmes inclusifs et avec des résultats pérennes sont gagnantes en fait pour la province. C'est ce qu'on essaie d'expliquer en parlant aussi de la nécessité de donner des couvertures de santé à toute personne qui vit sur le territoire de la province. Je pense que c'est gagnant pour les personnes concernées, mais aussi pour la société dans son ensemble, et aussi même pour le système de santé qui peut mieux prévenir, mieux gérer les processus, alléger aussi le fardeau sur le personnel soignant qui ne devient pas justement ce gestionnaire de statut d'immigration au lieu de soigner les gens. On sait que c'est quelque chose que nos collègues soignants dans le système de santé nous rapportent également. Donc on essaye aussi de faire comprendre que cette vision globale et compréhensive, elle est gagnante pour la province de manière générale.
Et juste pour compléter les autres remarques, c'est sûr que Solidarité sans frontières et le Centre de travailleuses immigrants travaillent ensemble pour s'adresser aux spécificités du Québec. Nous en fait, nous appelons toutes les partis politiques qui sont maintenant dans la contestation, les élections, de pousser le gouvernement fédéral de prendre une bonne position pour un programme de régularisation complet. Alors, c'est ça que nous allons continuer à réclamer un programme complet et le soutien au Québec. Et on voit plus et plus des personnes, des organismes et des personnes au Québec qui soutiennent cette position. Alors, à voir.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We are coming up to the hour, so I would like to invite Lauren, Caroline, Lawrence, any actually of our speakers, if you would like to say some final words, including Danilo or Caroline, Michael. Is there anybody who would like to, you heard some of the questions. Would anyone like to say final words? I'll just please indicate and I'll bring you in. Anybody? Caroline or Danilo, would you like to say anything? Caroline, Michael? You want to add something? Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, I really appreciate everyone for this opportunity. And I'm still just going to say this while we're rounding off, that we need the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to know and to grant us our request. And we want the immigration ministers as well, show pressure to hear our voices that we're demanding for status for all, and no one should be left out, no exception, and we do not need any conditions to be attached. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. I believe Nina, if you could just turn on your camera, we can, and then go ahead.
Nina, est-ce que tu veux dire quelque chose maintenant? Ou
oui. OK. Excuse-moi.
Juste ouvre la caméra est fermée.
Ah, OK. Donne-moi un instant. Voilà. Désolée. OK. Mais les choses que j'aimerais ajouter, c'est que comme stratégie très importante pour nous au Québec, c'est d'avoir le soutien et l'appui des syndicats et de la patronale. Parce qu'on sait que ça va être vraiment important, l'appui des syndicats, à cause que si tout le monde, on sait que dans le gouvernement et partout la société, c'est dit tout le temps la pénurie de main-d'œuvre. En attendant, on sait que nous sommes là et c'est nous que pendant la pandémie, les personnes en statut précaire sont prêtes en la première ligne, comme dit le gouvernement. Ça veut dire que ça va être très important qu'on puisse avoir l'appui des syndicats. C'est ça juste que je voulais ajouter aussi.
Perfect. Thank you, Nina. Hussan.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much. I see that there are still questions, but some of our folks need to return to work. So we're going to end it here. I want to reiterate that we are calling for full and permanent immigration status for all, that we are calling for an inclusive and comprehensive regularization program that we're doing this as migrants with the support of hundreds of organizations, including Oxfam, Climate Action Network, Doctors of the World, and the League that we heard from today, as well as many other organizations. And then this Sunday, September 18th, we invite you in your local cities where you are to find actions. All of that information is in the press release, including contact information. So please make sure to get in touch. You can contact us if you have any follow-up questions, if you want photos or background information about any of the speakers here. That would all be very helpful. Thank you so much. Mary, would you like to say any last words?
No, thanks. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming, and we'll see you out on the 18th of September. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.